Hello and welcome to the 1 o'clock panel, the booming industry of youth sports. Today we're joined with two special panelists. We have Colin Blake and Kim Lyman. But first, before we bring them on to introduce themselves, we want to remind the audience to please be active in the Q&A. We would love to hear your questions and ask the professionals about it. So without any more intro, Kim and Colin, take it away.
You can start first, Kim.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew. I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Kim Lyman, and I am currently the customer engagement representative for our Pro Team Sport division at the ESF Camps and Experiences. We run the professional camps for the Philadelphia Phillies, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Arsenal football development team, which is the soccer team based in London, England, and then also most recent, which will be new for 2021, the Brooklyn Nets Basketball Academy. So I'm really excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Excited to have you.
I'll follow Kim. Thanks for having me again. So my name is Colin Blake. I work at NXTsports, which is a youth lacrosse company. We run a club side division. So that's your travel teams, your camps, those sorts of things. And then we run events as well. So we'll travel all across the East Coast, all the way down to Texas. And then we'll even go to Indiana as well, running youth lacrosse tournaments. And we'll even run recruiting events where kids get recruited to go to college, and it's all specifically just lacrosse. So I'll pass along to Tom.
Hey everyone, my name is Tom Sinnott. I'm the Director of Sports Operations at the HEADstrong Foundation. The HEADstrong Foundation is a charity that helps families that are affected by cancer. So we have a portion of the company that works primarily in fundraising and assisting families affected by cancer. And then another section similar to Colin that has lacrosse clubs and events. So we currently have lacrosse clubs in Philadelphia, Lehigh Valley, South Jersey, and Western New York. And we run events in primarily the Philadelphia area, but we also partner with a lot of the college programs during their fall seasons to put together events that help fundraise for families that are affected by cancer.
So Tom, I owe you an apology. I did not see you on the screen. I'm so
No problem.
I am happy you're here as well. So I'm going to ask, I'll let you start it off for this question. What led you into youth sports?
So I grew up playing pretty much every sport imaginable. I played football, soccer, basketball, hockey, lacrosse, swimming, track. I tried it all. So when I originally started in college, I went to Penn State and I was an education major. And when I was on my visitations at school, I realized, I always wanted to be a coach and a teacher, but then clearly I realized I was not cut out to be a teacher and handle that amount of patience that it takes to be a teacher and dedication. So I shifted focus to the after school programming. And I changed my major to recreation, park, and tourism management. And prior to working for HEADstrong, I worked for the Philadelphia Department of Parks and Recreation for 8 years, developing programming for youth sports, as well as summer camps and all types of activities that you would find at a recreation center.
And Kim and Colin, you guys can also answer that same question.
Sure. So great question. I mean, I kind of agree with Tom. I grew up playing sports, every sport imaginable. I knew what it did for my life, the friends that I made, the experiences that I got to experience, and then also the life lessons it taught me regarding like teamwork and dedication, because those two things play a huge part of being so dedicated to a team sport. Before I was with ESF, I was the sport facility director at the Proving Grounds, which I got to witness so many great events that took place and just kids enjoying being kids. And I mean, that was like perfect for where I needed to be. But I will say it was kind of growing up into like a sport family and really into learning the experiences.
I'll piggyback off of Kim and Tom. I grew up playing sports. I still am playing sports currently at Newman, finishing up my career there. But I feel like anyone in youth sports probably grew up at some point playing a sport that got them there. But I wanted to do something with lacrosse. Lacrosse is my passion. Like I said, I'm playing still currently in my master's program at Newman. And then I was fortunate enough to have an internship 3 times with the company that I'm with now. So I liked it so much. I did such a good job that they were able to offer me for when I graduated last May. So that's where I ended up now, and I'm still continuing that path.
So, okay, so for the next question, this is directed at Kim, but again, the other 2 panelists can come in with their opinions. So how has COVID affected the growth of youth sports, in your opinion? Because this is such a great topic to talk about with the forever changing world and how it is today.
Sure, that is a great topic, and I'm sure Colin and Tom have great insight as well. We have been here at ESF blessed that we could have run 2020 camp, and that took a lot, but we learned a huge amount of growth in that. So we were very successful in running 2020 camp, and just listening to parents' perspective of how we went about doing it and how happy they were that their child could go back out onto that court or that field and play what they love to do and back with other children. It was such an inspiring moment to be able to give that opportunity to kids. It was actually very powerful, I thought, speaking with parents. Obviously, some parents weren't ready for that commitment last summer. However, we were able to provide them with the health and safety knowledge that we took on and presented that to them, and they felt comfortable. And that was like the best feeling, able to do it. I can say we ran 7 weeks of camp, all COVID free, which takes a lot. And obviously in the world we're living in, it was just such an amazing feeling to be able to know that we provided something that they missed for months before summer started last summer.
I think, Colin, if you want to hop in and give your thoughts on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of wanted to touch on kind of what Kim talked about was the health and safety part. So at Next, we are fortunate enough to have a health and safety participant employee full-time that really handles like the athletic training side, EAPs, that sort of thing. But he had to take on a bigger role with COVID, trying to get our return to play protocol, everything that we needed to do in order to run camps, have club practices, have youth events to a certain extent of what we were able to do, along with the state and local restrictions in the areas. So that was huge for us to be able to continue to do what we do and not get set back by that. So that was something really important for my company, at least. And I'm sure every company that wanted to run their normal programming, that was huge for us.
Yeah, I think the group that was impacted the most would be your basic township and recreation programs. Because what happened last year was those facilities were the first one to shut down. If it was a school district property or a township run property, they stopped programming. And really, the clubs were able to maneuver and find private facilities like the Proving Grounds and MSI that were able to reopen, but the rates at which they charge, really only club teams with those vast memberships are able to really afford the space. So you see, like, lacrosse and baseball season last year wiped out at the township and rec level. And then it carried over a lot to soccer and football groups in the fall. And and basketball and volleyball and hockey groups in the winter. So I think you see a large group of kids that were displaced by that weren't going to a traditional school setting and really needed that outlet of youth sports and interaction, which they missed out on. I think that's something that we don't know what the long-term effects are going to be on that. And it's just something that we're all hoping it's over this summer, but it was a completely unprecedented time. And like Colin said, you had to be flexible because the rules changed. It seemed like on a daily basis, but it was probably more like on a weekly basis. Like having an emergency action plan in place and just being able to communicate that with your staff is really what got us through the last year, really.
So guys, we got our first question in from our Q&A. It says, what do you think needs to happen to provide quality and affordable youth sports program for low-income communities? This is from Maurice.
Sure. Yeah, I can answer that because working in Parks and Recreation, I worked in a lot of low income neighborhoods and really sponsorship is a big key to that. Finding people that have the means that are interested in helping young people develop as athletes and finding the right volunteers. I mean, a lot of it is if you can get good quality people to help out that you don't have to pay, that makes a big difference, especially if it's a parent or an older sibling. But really, like, the barriers are the fixed costs, field costs, paying for officials, paying for uniforms. In some cases, you have to pay for coaching. So if you're able to get sponsorship to offset that, it helps out a lot.
So growing up playing youth sports, it was always got out of school, went to practice, played the sport, and came home. Nowadays, you're seeing that the youth sports industry has skyrocketed with all different types of different crazy ideas and new uniforms, new fields. Why do you think that culture changed in like a matter of a decade? And Kim, you could start with that one.
Sure. I guess I can speak from my previous experiences at a facility. I mean, Colin and NXT would practice at our facility, 3 nights a week, 4 nights a week. And it was all kids just wanting to play lacrosse. And it was also soccer kids just wanting to play soccer. And there's so much, I don't want to say pressure, but it kind of feels like pressure on these kids and the players as they kind of get into middle school. Coaches are already recruiting. I mean, even at younger than middle school. I mean, we witnessed families wanting to pay a company to come and film their child because they were having to submit their best game to already a high school coach at the age, so young. So it's just starting younger and younger. And I'm going to kind of throw this over to Colin because I think he kind of lives it a little bit more. So Colin, do you mind jumping in?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just going back to what Andrew said, where it was you go to practice, you go home. Where when I was growing up, I'm a year older than Andrew, so it's not like I'm much older, but it was always you want to be a dual sport athlete, either 2-sport, 3-sport, like you talk about that all the time. Now it's like kids play lacrosse year round, fall, winter, spring, summer. And it goes that way for soccer, for any sport, really. So it's very, it's changed like quickly within the past 5 years, really. And then you even go into the aspect of social media and video. So we have a video team. They film middle school age games where you're thinking, why would you do that? But these kids want to have highlight tapes when they're 7th, 8th grade. Maybe they're trying to get recruited to the Interact, where you have to have the money and the means to get to that private school, and you actually have to be good at that sport to get there. So those sorts of aspects kind of help develop that year-round sport per se. Tom, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a chicken and an egg thing. What started first? Was there the demand to create these club teams and compete and then be seen by college coaches? Or was it really the college coaching industry driving, a single place where they could go and see all the talent at once? I mean, I'm 35, and when I was in high school, the club scene, it was big for AAU basketball. It was big for travel soccer, but that was pretty much it. Like, there were a handful of really select lacrosse teams. If you were a really, really talented player, you would be on a travel team. And the way to get recruited back then was you would go to, like Colin mentioned earlier, one of these giant recruiting tournaments. All the coaches would come to that one big tournament, and then you'd kind of get seen there. There wasn't a whole lot of film going on. The high school coaches really didn't film a whole lot. We didn't do a whole lot of film study. And now, I think the advancements in technology have really changed things. You got like social media. People have high quality film on their phones. So it's so much easier to compile this data and share it and be seen and go. And there's just more. So that builds more competition. And okay, so my club's going to go to this many tournaments to try and be a little bit more competitive than what you have going on. And it's just this, the cycle of competitiveness.
So I actually have a follow-up to what you just said there. Do you think the use of social media for these club teams and these tournaments, do you think that the social media presence helps drive that competitiveness between each club, which is boosting the youth industry?
Oh, for sure. I know. I mean, we follow every other club locally and in the Tri-County area, if not all the big name ones all over the country, to see what they're doing to try and keep up with the trends, because it's what the fourth, fifth grader is looking at now. Like, that's one of the ways they're making a decision on which club to join. The optics are really important. Like, not only is it, the training you provide, but, that entire package of, what type of uniforms do you have? What type of events do you go to? Who are your coaches? Where do you practice at? All of it plays into importance, and the best way to highlight that is through social media, because that's where they are.
So we have a question in the chat. So from Anonymous, by the way, what's your best advice to handle parents in youth sports? And that could be, if anybody wants to take a mantle, because everybody's laughing at it because we all deal with it, right?
That's a great question. I mean, I can speak pretty good to that. I mean, I'm a customer engagement rep. I speak with parents all day, every day. And the best advice I can give you is be patient and be honest. Even if you have bad news to report to a parent, you need to be honest and trustworthy. Then they know that you're being honest with them. I mean, like I said, even if it's bad news, you have to kind of report that news, but you also then on their side, like, they kind of trust you, because sometimes it's always not good news. I would say that those would be my biggest advice pieces, is being honest and trustworthy, and being responsive, where a parent may reach out where you don't know the answer right away, but at least respond to them and say, thanks for your feedback or suggestion or your question. I will reach out to you as soon as I know the answer, kind of thing. Don't leave anyone hanging. That's what you don't want. Think of yourself as customer engagement, or a customer rep, where you're calling a company because something went bad at your home, or say a dishwasher broke or anything like that. And you want the follow-up response, and you want them to call you back right away. Even if they don't have an answer, just knowing that they got that you guys received their question or feedback. So that would be my couple biggest advice pieces for speaking with the parents on that kind of level. I'm sure Colin and Tom can kind of speak on like the playing portion of it, which thank God I don't really handle, because I can't even imagine what that's like nowadays.
Sure. Like I think the best piece of advice is you can't take it personally. So for them, it's very personal. For them, they have their time commitment, they have their financial commitment, and it's their child. So it's going to be, it can be very emotional, it can be very volatile for them. For you, you have to remove that element out of it and just sit there, let them speak their piece, and then take the time to say, okay, we're going to work through this. You know, these are the steps we're going to take. I will keep you updated through the process. You know, you're not always going to give them the answer that they want, but like Kim said, you have to be honest, and you have to, you know, be able to take a lot of verbal abuse at times. But as long as you're honest and you follow through with what you say you're going to do, that's all you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. What Kim and Tom both shared is great advice. There's no one thing that you need to do to solve that issue. That's always going to be an issue. But something that helped me, sort of along Tom's point of don't take it personally, is you got to diffuse the situation in a way where if a parent comes up to you screaming his head off, everyone's looking at that person, yelling at you, screaming at you, whatever it may be. If your tone is screaming back at them, it's only going to make it worse. So you kind of have to take a step back, relax, figure out exactly what their issue is, calm them down however you can, and then go along with, this is what I'm going to do, or this is what I can do. You're not, like Tom said, you're never going to solve, you might not be able to solve the problem or issue right away, but you're going to at least give them something to help them calm down a little bit.
So going off of the crazy parent topic and kind of going back to what you said, Colin, about how nowadays the youth sport, like the normal athlete, is a one sport year-round kind of kid. Do you think that's more because the parents are driving them to just play one sport and focus on one sport? Or do you think it's the kid's decision, he just doesn't want to do any other sports?
I can start. I think it's a little bit of both. I think that kids are being conditioned to play one sport, but if you listen to a lot of the top coaches in many different sports these days, they do say they like recruiting multi-sport athletes. But I think parents do get a little bit wrapped up in keeping up with the Joneses. So, you know, this kid's getting, you know, interest from this high school at 5th grade. So we've got to then send him to all these different clinics over the summer so he can catch up with the kid next to him. Like kids develop at different ages. You know, coming into high school, I was like 5'9", and then I really didn't hit a growth spurt until I was in college, and now I'm 6'2". So kids develop at all different ages and times, and I think parents get really wrapped up in, okay, if I'm not keeping up with those kids next to me, my kid's falling behind. I don't know if it's so much the kids really making that active choice.
And I think Marlon's got a question.
Yeah, Colin, we can start with you, man, because I think you just went through this. This is a question from Adam. What is the best way to find full-time opportunities in youth sports when lots of roles are part-time or volunteer focused? So if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the question kind of answers itself. And what I mean by that is the part-time and volunteer opportunities could be your way in. Like, I didn't get that internship right away just by interviewing. I was that part-time worker where I worked the tournaments and I set a good example for myself. I did a good job. I worked hard, where going into that first interview, I already had that step above anyone else that was just on that piece of paper. So that would, to me, is my best advice to anyone. I feel that Dr. J and Mezzi have also explained that to us in the sport management program at Newman. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I can kind of piggyback off of what Colin said. I mean, you do have to do those volunteer and part-time positions. I mean, it's very challenging to just apply for a full-time role right out of college in youth sports. It's probably very challenging, and I know that's probably not what everyone wants to hear, but it's kind of the honest truth. I mean, I did the same thing. I was an intern for a year after college, actually at ESF, where I am now. So I think, and it was just an hourly paid job for 1 full year after college. And I always was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like, I can't just do this for the rest of my life. An hourly job. But I realized that's what you had to do. I mean, I did that right after college. I'm now 30, and I went on, worked at a facility for 5 years, and ESF approached me back to bring me back because I did those experiences and did the hard labor and the things that people don't want to do, but you have to do it. If you really want to get to where you want to be, you need to take those. And sometimes that's the best experience you'll get. Doing those internships and those volunteer jobs, and you never know who you're going to meet along the way of doing a volunteer, and talk to people. You have to go out of your comfort zone. So that's probably my biggest advice for other undergrad students.
Yeah, when I was in undergrad and looking for full-time work and looking at my resume, be like, oh, I'd be great for this job. But now I'm on the other end of it, and I read the resumes, and it's like, okay, this person has worked facility management, whether it be just helping out at a high school basketball game or, working for a tournament event company. This person has, customer service experience from working in maybe the campus athletic department as a volunteer. And this person has, coaching experience by being a volunteer coach for a youth program. Like, those bits of experience do add up, and really it's like, okay, this person has been in these situations. They know how to handle themselves, as opposed to someone who, just goes to school, has a sports management degree and has no experience. I'm going to take the person that has a little bit of experience in multiple different settings, because I know that person has had experiences in the past that are most likely probably negative, and they know how to handle it.
So we got another question in from the chat. This one's a little longer. It says, there has been an increase of COVID-19 cases in the youth in the USA. What moral and ethical considerations should a youth sports organization make to play during this pandemic?
Great question. I'm happy to start here. I mean, we at ESF have a full-time nurse that is on our staff. I know Colin and NXT have the same safety protocols, staffing as well. So you need to be prepared for every possible incidents, anything. If you don't have those actions ready to go, if something does occur, it can go ugly real quick. To take that leap of faith to run camp in 2020, we knew we were taking a risk, but it was kind of a risk we kind of had to take. Or, I mean, who knows what 2021 would have brought the company. I mean, but we were also very prepared. We knew what we were doing. Safety's always been ESF's main priority, because you are dealing with youth and children. I mean, we were always kind of last summer, like joking, like parents had a million questions, but they were spending their money and on their children, their two most prized possessions. They're going to do everything possible to make sure that their child comes home COVID free. And if that meant we were taking more time in the mornings to do the sanitations and the temperature taking and you name it, we did it. But we communicated. We were open about communication. We let parents know what was going to take place, where drop off might be a little longer, but we communicated about 2 hours after camp saying, thanks so much for your patience. Tuesday morning will be a little bit more efficient, as we're all getting used to this. So that was another thing, like nobody knew what COVID was last February. And we were all learning together. Some parents were very understanding of that, but some weren't. But we were very prepared. And like I said, the communication was probably our biggest key. Like, we communicated every day to those parents through text messages and emails, where nobody was left in the dark. And we got very good positive feedback by the end of the program on communication, and saying like they felt safe because they felt like their child was having a good time, but they felt comfortable leaving their child in our possession after they probably didn't even leave their house since March. So that's kind of my feedback on that question, but that's a really good question because it's the world we're living in today. And unfortunately, it's not going away anytime soon, unfortunately. So we're still living in this COVID world.
Yeah, so talking about shifting gears here away from the COVID protocols, I know we touched on this before about how things have changed, especially for a child's development of trying to get into the collegiate level and the recruiting process. So one of the questions that I wanted to talk about is how different was it from 2000s to now? Like, I know back in my day, like, I would just go to practice and enjoy my time on the field, but there are kids that are starting at like 5, 6, 7 that are trying to get at that collegiate level and prepare via workouts or using social media, as you guys talked about. So I just wanted your opinion on how is it different from 2000s to now?
I mean, definitely the biggest difference are the multiple avenues. So you have people that are training, weightlifting and speed training and conditioning training. And those people are much more easily accessible and easier to find nowadays than it was in the early 2000s. Like, I played football in high school, and we had, a standard weight room with rusty equipment. And then we had a speed camp like once a week. And that was the extent of training. And that was coordinated by the coaches. Like, nobody had an individual trainer. Nobody had really access to anything beyond that. And even like, I guess you could join an LA Fitness or something, or a local gym to expand on it. But there wasn't the level of, like, now you could find trainers left and right everywhere. You could find one that you never even meet in person, work out with online. You have positional coaches for every imagined sport, every position, every age group. You have club teams at every different level that travel across the country, that travel locally. There's just so many more options now than there was then. And it is strange that with so many different options, people are becoming more and more specialized.
Colin, do you want to touch on that factor? Because I know that you're into recruiting these kids as well. So I wanted to talk to you about that as well and get your opinion on that.
Yeah, I think Tom is spot on with that, which, like, there's so many avenues. So like just for us and my company Next, we run a few showcases on guys and girls. A showcase is an individual event, an invitational is a team event, like a club team. So you have those individual events across the country. We aren't the only ones running showcases. There could be a showcase in Texas and the Midwest and the East. There could be 3 on the East Coast all on that same weekend. So it's like the amount of opportunities that these kids have to do, to be able to get recruited, is crazy. Like, I remember I'm 7 years out from high school, and club was huge for lacrosse, but it wasn't like do or die. Like, if you wanted to go play in college, you could do it just based off of your high school film. You weren't going to go anywhere crazy. But now these kids, like, there's kids now that are already committed to a college in high school, and they're still playing in these individual recruiting events or these team events because maybe they want to improve their exposure. So say they're at a low level D1, but they want to get to that top level D1, they can still play in these individual events and get more exposure and get those looks that they really want. So I think Tom hit it spot on with the amount of avenues that you can go, the training sessions, the camps, the clinics, the tournaments, the showcases. There's so much that you can do. And I think there's a lot more options for you to do things now with COVID on your own at home. The now making videos for you to do at home type of workouts, that sort of thing. So there's so many avenues you can go.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So many things. Now, going off of that, Kim, if you want to touch up on when and why do you think there was a turning point in all this? Because I know we've talked about, like Colin spoke and said, when I was like growing up, there wasn't that many things to do and stuff like that. So when was that turning point to like kids have to do this? Like there's facilities offering all of this.
That's a great question. I mean, I don't know exactly when, but I mean, probably 6 years ago when the Proving Grounds was becoming a facility, like in literally from the ground up. I was like, what is this? Like, who's gonna come pay money to come? Like, who's gonna do this? But then we didn't even have enough space. It was, we need it more and we need it more and we need it more. And I mean, Colin experiences it every day. Like there's not enough space for all these clubs, which is crazy because it's like, where do all these kids come from? Like they're also individualized sports anyway. It's kind of like, it's crazy. But like, I would say when we were building the Proving Grounds, which is still being built, like it was where I was at first, I was like, this isn't going to be, I actually started part-time there. And a week into it, it turned full-time because it was such a large task to happen. But I would say probably 7-8 years ago when I started seeing it for myself. I mean, Tom and Colin may see something different just from their experiences. But that's what I can base off of. Tom or Colin want to jump in?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I officiate lacrosse games, and I remember reffing in next spring league, their boys spring league, back in 2014 or 2015, when the Proving Grounds had, I think, 1 or 2 turf fields and 2 terrible grass fields. And then within 2 years, there's 5 turf fields there. And like Kim said, you can't, like those fields don't stay open unless there's snow on the ground. Like people, there's a demand for it year round. And there's so many more club teams now fighting for the same, scraps of land. And I think, I just think the demand for turf, the demand to never have to cancel practice due to weather has increased. And now you're starting to see, I think you were starting to see a trend for more and more indoor facilities before COVID hit. And a lot of those indoor facilities really had to take a step back because the indoor facilities had much more restrictions around COVID, which is why basketball really shut down, just because of the 6 foot social distancing standards and being in a closed location. So being outside, there was a lot less restrictions. So people were playing, in the winter when they normally were looking for a place to play inside.
Yeah, I think you both touched on a point on facilities. So there's now more and more and more turf facilities, elite type of facilities coming up where there's less and less grass that you play on. So I think that's huge impact on the youth sports, the club teams. Yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, and so even piggyback off of what Tom said, like when I was scheduling these events and practices and showcases, everything, like I was shocked when people were like, well, I'll take like from January to February. I'm like, and it's outside. I was just like, and this was pre-COVID. And I'm like, okay, like to us, that was great. But I was just in my own head. I was like, that's insane that you're going to put these kids outside in January and February. Like, yeah, we could get a nice warm night where it's 30, but they were out there in that. I mean, Colin sees it every night, or not now because it's beautiful out, but they're out there in rain, snow, sleet, hail, you name it. And I was just kind of blown away by that piece of it, because I was like, oh, the winter will be slow for us. No, it wasn't. And it was then where I was like, wow, this is a thing.
Yeah, the turf facilities really cut out all weather activities besides snow and thunder and lightning. You can play
Mhm.
in any other type of climate. So that, I think that really is what lessened the risk for these groups to come in and be like, all right, well, we'll put an event together and all these teams can come out. And as long as there's, and especially in the summer, as long as there's no thunder and lightning, these games are going to happen. And we can guarantee that.
So just a friendly reminder, we got about 10 minutes left. So if anyone in the chat wants to ask their final questions, get them in now. But we'll start with you, Tom, for this question. Do you, with all these club teams and just teams in general, having so many amenities and like to the extremes, how do you attract kids to come play for your club over, say, a competitor's?
I think if we're just talking about lacrosse in the Philadelphia area, like all of our clubs do something a little bit differently, whether it be social marketing, whether it be, the level of like exposure we guarantee, or it's the culture. So with HEADstrong, we're an organization that has its ties to charitable effort. So we really promote that. And also we promote our coaching staffs. Our specifically, for an example, like our boys affiliate program is coached by Penn staff, and Penn is one of the top 10 programs year in and year out. So like really what we try and do is build that culture and share that culture, whether it be through social media or different engagement events. But we all do something a little bit differently, and really that's what it is. It's you've got to sell your culture over the other organization's culture.
Yeah, I think Tom hit that spot on. Each club has similar things, but they have something that sets them apart. And it's like for us, we have this big media day for our sponsor, which is Nike. So our club is sponsored by Nike. We have this whole media day where these kids get the brand new cleats that were just released. They get their picture taken, they get their practice in them, and it's this whole social media just like campaign that they get to put out on their socials and be like, I'm part of that club. So it's like each club does something different, where maybe on Tom's side they do more of a charitable type of campaign, where on our side we're going to go show off that Nike sign or those Nike cleats. So it's like each club does something different that sets them apart from the other. But it's all about like what that parent or what that kid wants to be a part of.
So I'm going to direct this question towards Kim. From Tommy from the chat, what sports do you feel have the most growth recently, and what sports could do a better job in growing their own sport?
Great question. I mean, to me, I think lacrosse is definitely grown so much. And the sport that I think kind of needs a little bit more help is baseball. I feel like kind of baseball is like a dying sport, unfortunately. I mean, you have so many kids that like that more action than the baseball, where it's kind of more of a slower game. But that's kind of mine. I know, I mean, Colin can probably, and Tom can speak to the lacrosse, but I don't know if you guys disagree or agree, but that would be my insight.
Yeah, well, as someone who officiates both football and lacrosse, football is the sport. As much as it pains me to say, it's my favorite sport overall, but that's the one that needs the most help in changing. It has obviously, the most criticism and the most negative attention due to concussions. Lacrosse has done a much better job of making the game safer and more accessible. So I think football is going to go more into like a flag model, and you're going to have less and less physical contact at the younger age group, and it's going to be more fun and flag based leagues popping up. So I think if football adapts that and they go more towards flag based and they're more inclusive to both boys and girls. That's how they can grow on their end. But I mean, I started officiating football in 2011, and I used to be able on a Saturday morning work youth games from like 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. And now there's maybe 2 youth games on a Saturday, and you still have a lot of high school teams participating, but the numbers have significantly gone down on the youth end.
Yeah, I think Kim and Tom both have very valid points for both baseball and for football. The other thing is that if we want to talk lacrosse here, baseball competes with lacrosse. It doesn't really compete with football because you can the main time of that sport is spring for lacrosse. So that's baseball season. So that's where you get a lot of turnover there, where the kids growing up there in this day and age, they tend to want the more active lifestyle where they're coming to lacrosse instead of they're going to baseball. But you do have a ton of football players that are playing lacrosse as well, because lacrosse has, like you say in lacrosse, football translates, basketball translates, soccer translate, all these sports translate to lacrosse. But does baseball translate to many of these sports? Probably not. So that's just my 2 cents on it.
So we got another question, and Tom, I'll throw this one at you. You can start off. So we've obviously talked about like the evolution of youth sports and like how much it's changed. So my question is, what's there for the future? Like, what can be improved? What do you see in your eyes that can be changed?
That is a really good question. What can really be changed? I mean, I think better education for parents. And I think like the biggest thing I see with parents is expectations and reality. Like you need to really be a better evaluator of, how, for lack of a better word, talented your kid is. And are you pushing too hard? Like, is the talent really there that they're going to become this like super successful Division I athlete that's competing for national championships? And do they have the desire to do that? So if there's a desire on the kids' end and the parents' end, by all means, chase that dream. But if there isn't, be a little bit more realistic. Is, Division III at a university that's a better fit for them, is that a better end game? So I think like as people on the sports admin side, we need to do a better job of managing the expectations and realities of the parents.
So should we be expecting you guys to have stadiums soon, since everything just keeps going up and up? Are you guys going to have your own personal stadiums at HEADstrong, NXT, ESF? So this will be the last question, and it's I would just say, what should a kid that's looking at playing, say, lacrosse in the spring, what should he be looking into a club or a team rather than letting his parents decide? Should he have something that he should be looking for in a program, or should it just be whatever their parents throw him into? And Tom, if you want to start, since you're already on.
Sure. Well, I think, yeah, they have to know how realistic it is. So, yeah, in our area, there's a lot of competition. So do you want to go, and I'll throw a club out there, Triple H, and you're going to be competing in Long Island and Baltimore and in this area a lot. Are you at that talent level where you're going to be a Division I player? And do you want to devote, your life to chasing that dream? Or do you want to go somewhere that, the skill set is more at your level? So you're going to be getting, more realistic expectations, and you're going to be getting better advice as to what works better for you. So knowing, kind of being able to evaluate yourself a little bit better, and then knowing, okay, here are my options. Like, what am I going to have more fun doing? And while I'm having more fun, I'm going to be more engaged and a better participant in this club.
Yeah, just touching off of Tom, I think he has great points, and it really revolves around where that child's priority lies, what he really wants out of this. A big thing is, can his parents afford it? Lacrosse is very expensive. Can the parents afford it? Are they willing to afford it for their child? And then like Tom was saying, having fun. They're kids. Like, they still have to grow up and live the rest of their life. Like, a lot of things you see is kids, maybe they move to a different club because it's more serious, like more exposure for them, but they leave behind friends. And that's a big decision for a lot of kids. Just like moving to a different school, it's a big decision. And then how serious you want to be. Do you want to get to that D1 level? Maybe you can be at a lower level club level. If you're just trying to go to D3, your school's more important to you, but you still want to play. So it all really depends on what that child is looking for, where their priorities lie.
Kim, did you want to touch on that at all, or?
No, I definitely agree with what Colin and Tom all said. Yeah.
So we're all out of time. Special thanks to Kim, Colin, and Tom for taking their time out and being a part of this panel. Everyone in the audience, please hit up the Newman NUSM 460 website and sign up for more panels. We've got so many guests, so many great panels left for the rest of the day. Once again, special thanks. Can't thank you guys enough for being a part of this. And thanks.